You can go and have coffee and donut time with these guys. That's good stuff right there. Hey, who buys, by the way? Just kidding.
You buy. I can't afford it.
Oh, okay, I see. Right on. Well, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your cause and what you're doing. Representative Lou Frederick, if you guys see him out, he's definitely approachable, guys. I just had my picture with him. I smiled. It was all cool. And so definitely email him and let him know. And thank him for coming here, too. You know, it's time out of their schedule to do these things that we're doing, and we appreciate that. All right, Salem. He mentioned a lot of stuff going on in Salem. And Jennifer Alexander, hopefully you guys are getting the Portland NORML newsletters and all that. If you're on our email list, if you're not, definitely let us know, and we can arrange to have that fixed by the time this meeting's over, so you guys will start getting our updates. But she's been doing a great job on keeping us all updated on what is exactly going on down there. And Jennifer was going to come up here and give us an update now on what exactly is happening on some various causes down in Salem. So, Jennifer Alexander, y'all.
Thank you. Hi guys. So what he said first, let me just say there is a sign-up sheet right here. If you are not on our email list, all you have to do is walk over here, add your name. That's all free. You don't have to be a paid member. Anybody can sign up to get our newsletters. And you should always share those newsletters with your friends. Spread the word around, because I'm putting a lot of details in there. You know, not everybody has a chance to go to Salem. Not everybody can sit through the 2 or whatever hours twice a week listening to the different committees, and it's going to get fast. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening really rapidly in the coming month. So definitely sign up, share that, make sure that this is getting spread around, and everybody that's interested in this issue is being active and involved. Also, Rep. Lou Frederick mentioned OLIS, and I was thinking in this week's newsletter, just trying to put a little bit of information about how to use OLIS, because it's a wonderful tool. I spend a lot of time on it every week, and I know there's a few other people in this room that I know for a fact do as well. I was going to try to just put a little tidbit in there that explains how you can find stuff there, because you can read other people's testimonies, you can read the full text of a bill, you can find your representatives, you can find out when the committees are meeting and where. It's just a wonderful tool. It really opens up the process to the average public member. So definitely I think it's valuable for everybody to learn how to use that. I'm going to try to put that into this week's newsletter. So this last week, they kind of did a few different things. So Monday, the week prior, there had been a lot of controversy over the local opt-out, and that kind of stalled everything in the M91 committee. And if you're not familiar with what that means, that's whether or not local governments can say, we don't want marijuana dispensaries or processors in our city or county. And this kind of stalled the whole conversation for a couple of meetings. And what they were arguing was that many of the committee members wanted to allow the local opt-out to prevent future lawsuits, to kind of get the process moving forward. 3 of the House members stood up and firmly said, no, we're not allowing local opt-out. That was Representative Helm, Representative Ann Leininger, and Representative Peter Buckley. And they stood firm and refused to budge, and without one of them at least agreeing to do it, it couldn't proceed because they had to have a majority of the 5 members. 3 means no. So what they did is Peter Courtney, the Senate leadership, said we're going to split this committee off for this issue, and they had a meeting last Monday. In that meeting, they pushed through the local opt-out to get it off to the Senate floor. Now that doesn't mean it's a done deal though, so that's important to realize that moved it along. There's a lot of support for the local opt-out, unfortunately, so I think this is one thing that we really need to be involved in, both for recreational and for medical. They're looking for the option for the governments to opt out. So definitely, like Rep. Lou Frederick was saying, you need to reach out to these people and tell them how important this is to you and why it's important to you, so that they will hopefully evolve their position on this. But in the meantime, it's going to sit and sort of hang out because it's got budgetary implications. So it's not going anywhere quite yet. Eventually it'll come back to the Senate floor, and then they'll vote on it. It'll go to the House and they'll vote on it, and then Kate Brown will have to sign it before it becomes law. So we've got a little bit of time. In the meantime, after they passed that out, they then went back to the Joint Committee and began working on recreational. And in the recreational bill, they put forth the -1 amendment, which basically laid out what they're looking at. There's a few different things going on in here, and it's, if I recall correctly, 104 pages long. It's a lot of reading. So again, in this week's newsletter, I'm going to try to summarize the main features of that 104 pages so that you hopefully can respond instead of spending the next 2 weeks trying to read it. The one thing that I personally think is really important to reach out to our legislators about right now is taxation. When Measure 91 was passed, it was passed with very specific taxation that was taxed at the first point of sale. It was $35 per ounce of marijuana flowers, $10 per ounce of marijuana leaf, and then $5 per marijuana start or immature plant. And so now they've moved it to the point of sale, and there's some benefits to that. However, in moving it to the point of sale, that sort of changes the entire picture, and they have to try to figure out how they're going to tax it now so that it, first off, discourages people from avoiding the legal market and going to the black market to avoid taxes, but also to encourage the revenue. So they have to balance these two things. And these are the things that we have to keep in mind, that they have to keep in mind. We can't say no tax, because then they don't make any money. But we don't want it to be such a high, ridiculous tax that nobody wants to go to the legal market. So I think it's really important that we give them feedback as to what those taxation rates should be, how they should be determined. Now, none of us are economists, I don't think.
That's one of my undergraduate degrees.
Oh, well, I did not know that. So
leave it to Lucy.
I was wrong. No, that's awesome. But there's some really important features there. And so what I did this last week, and I brought it in case anybody was interested. I write really long-winded things sometimes, though. So I kind of analyzed some of the taxes in Oregon. A pack of cigarettes, and cigarettes are recognized to be one of the most harmful legal substances available, has a $1.31 per pack tax. If we had something comparable to that, that seems really reasonable, but it works out to be 35% tax, so keep that in mind. But it's not based on the cost of the cigarettes, it's based on a pack of cigarettes. So it's tied to the consumption of the product, not to the dollar value of the product. And I think that's important, and I think that's kind of what a lot of the committee members and other people have recognized, is that if we tie it to the purchase price, as price fluctuates, so do revenue. If we tie it to consumption, then it's tied to the consumption rates and not to the market rates. So that's one of the things that they'll have to think about. One of the other things, again, local opt-out. That's going to be a continuing dialogue. They have not really evolved that yet in the recreational side. I think they're avoiding that topic so that it doesn't stall immediately. If they start talking about that now, the rest of the conversation just sort of gets forgotten. So I don't think they're going to go there quite yet. But again, we still need to be considering this. If there aren't legal outlets, there's going to be illegal ones. That's why we passed Measure 91. It's not like nobody could buy pot. So we need to think about, how are we going to be having access to this? Now with Measure 91, of course, any adult can grow their own, and despite the local opt-outs, you'll still be able to grow your own. So keep that in mind. Even if your community opts out, whether medical or recreational, you can still grow your own. They can't opt out of that. Let's see, what was the other thing in there? This last week, like I said, 104 pages. It's a lot to absorb. But really what they're looking for right now is what matters to you. And they really wanted a starting point. So they just sort of threw out some language to give us a place to start. So it's really important that you take that moment to call your legislator, to write a letter, and like I can't say his name all in one. Rep. Lou Frederick said, it's important that it be an individual letter and that it not be an angry letter. You can't write to them and say, don't do this, you evil person. They're not going to respond to that. They're just really not. You can say, this really upsets me because it affects me in this way. That's okay. But you can't call them evil and tell them, don't do this, you can't do this, you need to, stop everything. Well, their job is to do laws. They're not going to stop everything. Give them some suggestions on how to improve it. Give them some suggestions on what areas would make it better for you or your community. The more feedback you get, the better it gets. And it really is, like Russ said, those 5 phone calls make a difference. I've written like 5 letters and made a few phone calls, and I can tell you honestly, every single one of my letters has had an impact. Now, small impacts, I'm not saying I've changed the whole paradigm or anything, but small impacts. I've watched them take something that I wrote and apply it at every step of the way. So your contact with them does matter. Now, nobody's going to get everything that they want, and that's really important. Senator Brzezinski's talked about that a few times if you've been following along. But the feedback matters. They are listening. Even when you don't think they are, they are. Now, it's really important that you educate them because most of them don't understand what it's like to be a marijuana consumer. They don't understand what it's like to be a medical patient. They don't understand what it's like to be in this business. They don't understand all of the obstacles that we face. A lot of things that most businesses take for granted, you can't take for granted here. And they don't know that. We need to inform them of that. So they're learning. It's a continuing evolving process. But if you guys want to be involved, make sure to sign up. Like I said, I'm trying to give you all the details in the shortest possible, it's long, but the shortest possible form that I can. I'm going to try to give you some information about how to use OLIS and how to find your representatives. I mean, the committee is definitely powerful. Oh, wonderful. Here is OLIS. So really quick, while this is up here, because this is hard to explain verbally, these are the meetings. You can go and watch any meeting that ever happened right here. So if you haven't been following along and you want to get caught up, all you have to do is click this little play button and you can watch the meeting from that day. When you click on one of these meetings, it brings up a different window.
Let's see if I can do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is awesome, because this...
There I am.
A little further to the right. Any one of them.
That one?
That's fine. So like if you click on the date, that doesn't play it. That brings you to the page for the meeting. If you click on the little play button, that plays the video. But
Well, now we have to wait.
I was going to say, is it going?
Slow internet.
Okay, so once it loads up, there you go. You have this recording log, meeting materials, and agenda. The meeting materials
PDFs,
right there.
Right there, the actual bills.
And then right there where it says meeting materials up at the top, that'll take you to everybody's testimony. If you click on that, you can download every submitted testimony there. And that's also like what we can refer back to in future years. This is like the written record. So I think it's really important that you get your thoughts recorded here. That preserves it for posterity. This is part of the process of lawmaking. The recording log is just a quick summary of what the video is. It's very, very short. It's not detailed at all, but it kind of highlights this is when they moved something, this is when they voted on it. So that's helpful too. This tool is awesome. But if you wanted to sign up for the newsletter, like I said, I'll give a little bit of detail on how to use this because this is very cool. And one other thing, up here, bills and committees. If you click on committees, you can go to the Joint Committee on M91. If you click on bills, you can sort by any bill. And I think John has something to say. You want to?
Mr. Lucy.
Here, let's get you on the microphone so everybody can hear you.
Okay. So one of the most useful points of OLIS, especially for people who don't have time to live on it, like those of us who live and breathe and sleep this do, is there's an RSS feed as well as an email subscribe feed where you can automate the process so that if you're trying to track a bill, you want to know what's happening with the bill, you don't have to constantly look at this site all day, every day. I just have it open on my desktop. It's always there just because I'm always tracking this. But if you have a job and a life that's not marijuana policy, that will make it a lot easier to deal with, and it'll give you an auto alert. So if something is coming up, you can call your senator, you can call your congressman, you can get in there and get something done. And also, when you set it up, you can set it up, and if you're talking to your friends, you can all set it up at once, and that way things will happen much more quickly instead of having to watch this 12 hours a day like some of us do.
Excellent. Yeah, there's so many great tools here. Oregon is, in my experience at least, is one of the most open legislative processes. They really make it easy for you to be involved from voting to legislature. So definitely, if you have questions, like Russ said, our emails are all our name at portlandnormal.org. If you need help finding something, if you need help crafting, your position, if you're just like, this really makes me upset, I don't know how to, feel free, reach out. I mean, we'll help you. We need those voices at the legislature. So,
and I would say, as far, Jennifer touched on it, but the talking point that's going to work, this local option stuff that's going on, where they want to, have a 3-2 vote of the city council, ban a medical marijuana dispensary. If they get that passed, they're going to pass it for recreational as well, because it makes no sense to be easier to ban a medical place than a recreational place. They'll want the same rule. So I agree that this local option thing is really huge. One of the things we can use, and I haven't written this yet, I'm writing it up, an open letter to Senator Cruz, which is, he made this big point about worrying about the Cole memo. Now, the Cole memo is what the federal government put out, these 8 points that says, all right, states, if you're going to do the marijuana thing, here's 8 things we want to see that you don't do. And one of them was, interstate traffic. They didn't want to see leakage. They wanted to have control over the marijuana market to help fight and have it not be a cover for criminal markets and such. So that does not jibe with the idea of a locality banning a marijuana facility. All that does is encourage the black market and facilitate trafficking more than it would necessarily do. So let's use that fear, because I really believe sometimes that you can use their fears in a jujitsu way, kind of against them, kind of twist their fear against them, and say, well, yeah, we're worried about the Cole memo too. That's why we don't want to see these local bans happening. And let's get Lee's got always something good too.
The local option issue is a little more subtle than that. What's going on is, in the 91 committee, the folks on the House side were willing to have a local option, a ban, so long as it would be an automatic referral to the people in the community, just like we wrote it into 91. On the Senate side, however, they were willing to compromise further. They were willing to compromise, yeah, there could be a local ban, and if there's a ban, then there has to be an initiative, but instead of 6% of the votes that you need to get for that in the last general election, that you need to be able to get signatures, instead of 6% of the votes for the number of signatures, will be 4% for the number of signatures. Our friends, as Lou Frederick mentioned, Ann Leininger, Ken Helm, and Peter Buckley on the House side all said, hell no. We're not going to put up with that. That's not fair. Ann's quoted in the Oregonian saying, why should it be easier for somebody who's using to get high to be able to quash a ban than it is for somebody who's using it for pain management? It just doesn't make any sense at all. So that's what's going on. I've been going around litigating around the state on these bans and whatnot, and yesterday, the Washington Supreme Court, did you see this, John? They upheld the ban in the city of Kent in Washington. I know Rachel saw this too, in the city of Kent. So it's a real battle. The stuff that's going on in the United States Supreme Court with Oklahoma and Nebraska suing Colorado, and there's a couple of lawsuits in Colorado. John and I had won a case in the Oregon Supreme Court requiring the sheriffs to requiring the sheriffs to issue concealed handgun licenses to people, even though they were medical marijuana patients some time back. That's a important case still nationally, but it's a huge fight. And the thing about the local control is that the people who are supportive of it are supportive of it in the way that it's kind of like states' rights, right? That, you know, there's the federal government and the states are independent laboratories, and the idea was that local municipalities could be independent laboratories also. But you don't see nobody saying, hey, it's okay, in our town you could be 500 feet away from a school. No worries. What it is people in these towns are saying, we don't like your kind. And we're going to do everything we could do to make it so you can't be here. So what we're seeing, I'm guessing that Rachel and John, you've seen this as well, where they're zoning that is functionally a ban. It's like they say, well, you not only can't be within 1,000 feet of a school, 1,000 feet of each other, can't be within 1,000 feet of a church, can't be within 1,000 feet of a park. Next thing you know, you could be over by the sewage treatment plant or down here by the, well, no, you can't be there because that's residential. So we've been, there's a lawyer I'm working with named Ross Day, who's a land use lawyer. He's been litigating these issues in the Land Use Board of Appeals. And so it's a fight on several levels, but it's important that we win it. And what I've been learning about going to the legislature is that it's, you know, I stopped by to see my state senator to talk to him about this bill. It's what is it? 964, right? Yeah. 964 is the Senate bill that would allow a ban and require an initiative to overturn the ban. And I stopped by my state senator's office, Chip Shields, and they said, yeah, you know, we've been receiving a lot of emails but not from constituents. So that's why it's critically important that constituents contact their legislators, and at some point it'd be good if we could, statewide, you know who are good advocates in each of the districts. And if anybody lives in Jenny Burdick's district and is thinking about a career in politics, we could sure use a candidate. And she's up for re-election next year. Thanks.
Hey, Lee,
yes? You got the mic. Why you got the mic? Could you take a minute and give us an update on inspections? Inspections is another issue that is kind of going on right now with home inspections and...
Well, I think Jennifer's following this more closely than I am.
I can talk about that.
Okay, well, I'm having inspections...
It's changing so fast, but The long and the short of it is the bill about the medical is stalled. But what it would allow, as I recall, is that it limits the number of plants and it allows inspections.
Well, I would like you to speak on that for a second, because I think it's huge. Because for one thing, for me, is after July 1st, you know, we can grow 4 plants. And for me, I'm going to encourage everyone that I know to grow plants. That's my deal. I want everyone growing. But at the same time, if we have a few suits in a back room right now discussing ways to come to my house and inspect me, I feel like that's a problem. And that is kind of what's going on. These discussions are happening. And if you could just give us an update.
So really quick, let me just say one thing before we go to inspections. While medical and recreational have plant limits, let's be very clear, and this is like uncontroverted everywhere. It's only a limit on mature plants. And mature plants in all of these bills have been redefined to be a flowering plant. That means, that's both in medical and recreational.
No, the adult use is 4 plants, period. It doesn't say mature or adult.
Are you sure? I thought that they defined it as immature. Okay.
It's just 4 plants.
Well, I thought that in the language that they put forth, though, I thought that they redefined it to say that immature. So the way that I've read it, and again, it's evolving, and we've got some legal minds that can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's evolving. But basically what they've said is that there's these limits on mature plants, but there's no limits defined, and we'll go with medical for sure, because that's been very clear, but recreational, I expect to see the same language come forth if it isn't there already. And that's that you can have immature plants without limit. Now that's kind of yay, but with that in mind, so then with the inspections, what they originally had proposed was that all gardens would be inspected. And there was an uproar, because if I'm a private medical patient, nobody needs to come into my house to be inspecting anything. You have a 4th Amendment right against that. So as soon as that was brought to their attention, they said, whoa, 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 that wasn't our intent. We didn't mean we're going to come into your house and inspect. So they exempted a person who is growing for themselves. What they have not exempted, which is still a very strong point of contention, is if I'm growing for you. If I am only growing for you in my home, that's not exempted right now.
So,
Here, let's...
that's in the bill. Yeah, I need the
Here, I got it.
So, the way that bill is written, and part of the purpose of it is that if you're growing, if you're growing for a bunch of people who you don't know and you're selling primarily to the dispensary market, their concern was they wanted to be able to inspect. The way it's written right now, though, it says if you're not growing for yourself, you're subject to inspection. Collective gardens that are registered appropriately, where the patient is listed as the grower,
Right.
at that site, are not inspectable under the Act.
Right.
So for small gardens, there's not going to be much of any inspection, right? As far as the 4th Amendment protection on it goes, I don't know that I'd rely on that, because frankly, the government said for certain activities that require licenses that are done in the home, they can still inspect. If I make Class 3 firearms at my house, they can still come in and inspect if I'm selling them to other people or if I'm engaging in commerce with other people. I think it would be, I wouldn't rely on that so much as the fact the bill's written in such a way that as long as everyone's registering as a collective garden site where they're working together on the garden, I don't think you're going to have an inspection issue with it. If you're growing 96 giant outdoor plants, they're probably going to want to inspect if you're growing for multiple people and you've got contracts for dispensaries for the additional product that's going out. That isn't to say I like them walking into anybody's house. I understand that. I don't want that. But the way the bill is written right now,